Alright guys, so we're back with part 5 of our Discord JS role reaction bots with databases. So, in this video I'm going to show you guys how to actually start listening to reactions on messages. And I'm going to show you guys how to add the roles whenever a user reacts to a message. Okay, so a little history. In version 11, before version 12, before partials were even introduced, if you wanted to create a role reaction bot, the only way you could have done it was, well, there was actually multiple ways, but there was one way where you can just, do a command and it'll display a message and it'll give you all the reactions that you can use. Or you would have a general message like how I have on my server, and you can just at any time you can always react or unreact and you'll get the roles, right? Obviously this is a lot better. And if you wanted to do it this way, you had to use the raw event to manually fetch the message that you were reacting to in order to actually cache that message and be able to handle the message reaction add event, okay? Because the message reaction add event is the event that you would listen to handle events when someone reacts to a message. So let's say, for example, if I react to this message, the message reaction event gets fired, and I should add the users to a role whenever that event is fired. Okay. The problem was that since we had to use the raw event and the raw event was undocumented, it was so much work. Okay, it was a lot of work, took a lot of time. But now with version 12, it's actually a lot easier, and I'm going to show you guys in just a sec. Okay. I actually did a tutorial on this. I actually did a tutorial on partials back like in September or October, but things have changed since then. So this is going to be the new tutorial with partials. Okay, back then they didn't have the reaction partial. Now they do. Okay, so back then they only had, I think it was just user, channel, and message, but now they added a reaction and guild member. I honestly don't remember. Anyways, so what are partials? Okay, so partials are pretty much another way of saying, hey, look, this piece of content has this piece of content is uncached data. If you want the full availability of that content, you need to fetch it from the Discord API. Okay, that's pretty much the gist of it. Okay, if a message, so you're going to notice that the message object, right, has the partial property right over here. Zoom in. Okay, guild member as well has the partial property, it seems. Yep. So the reaction object, the reaction emoji? No, it's not. Oh, it's reaction. There we go. This also has the partial as well. Okay, and all that property resembles is whether or not the data is cached or not. Okay, so if it's not cached, that means it's a partial. And what that means is we need to actually fetch it. And you can actually go to the Discord JS docs. You can look at the examples that they give you. This is a perfect example of how partials work. Okay, so we are listening to the message reaction add events. We have an asynchronous callback function that takes 2 parameters. What we're doing here is we're checking to see if the message itself is a partial, aka is that message cached or not. So if it's a partial, that means the message is not in the cache. So what we're going to do is we're going to fetch it. Okay? If it isn't a partial, that means it's cached, so we don't have to do anything else. Okay? And they also have a couple warnings too. And it says the only guaranteed data a partial structure can store is its ID. So in some use cases, you might not even need to fetch the data. You just need to make sure that the message that they're reacting to is correct. Okay? So how are we going to implement this now? Okay, so the idea is, remember how we have our general message that everyone needs to react to? So we need to be checking to make sure that people are reacting to this message, right? The question is, how do we make sure that they're checking that they're reacting to that message? Okay, before we hard-coded our IDs, now we can't really hard-code our IDs because we have stored everything inside the database. I mean, we could hard-code it, but it would defeat the whole purpose of creating this dynamic role reaction bot that uses the database. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, well first let's start off with listening to the message reaction add events. So it's going to take in two parameters, reaction and user. Okay, and what we're going to do is we need to opt into partials. So inside the client constructor over here, wherever you defined your Discord client, you're going to pass in an object. You're going to pass in the property partials. You're going to pass in an array and need to opt into message as well as reaction. You need to opt into both of these. If you watched my previous tutorial, you only need, if you watched my last tutorial back in October on the v12 role reaction bot, that was when it was still in development mode and you only needed to opt into message. Now you need to opt into both for it to work. I spent like 15 minutes trying to figure it out and I finally figured it out, so I was so happy. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to say, hey, look, if reaction dot message dot partial, okay, if this message is a partial, then we need to fetch it. Okay, we're basically saying, look, a user reacted to an uncached message. Now if I go over here and if I react, our bot hasn't restarted yet, just give it some time. Okay, watch. A user reacted to an uncached message. Likewise, is on the cache, right? Now, again, like I said earlier, depending on your use case, you really don't need to worry so much about fetching. In this case, the partial itself actually does have, if you actually log the partial, so right now I'm going to log message to the console, you're going to see what the data looks like, and I'm going to show you what it's going to look like when you actually fetch the message. Okay, so give it 1 sec. But it's always going to have the ID. Okay, so you might not even need to care about the content, right? So notice how I look over here, right? We have the message object here, right? We have the ID, we have the type of we have the channel. Well, that's the channel. That's the channel. Let's go to. Okay, so you have the ID, but notice how everything else is undefined, right? We don't have any information about the content of the message. We don't have the information of the message type, pinned, authors, null, all this stuff. If you need this data, right, you need to fetch that message. So it'll hit the Discord API, it'll get all the data that you need, and it'll replace it, it'll put it in the cache, and you'll be set. But I really think that we actually don't need all this data. The only thing that we need to worry about is making sure that the message that they are reacting to corresponds to a message that has people reacting emojis with to get their roles. Okay, so the way that we're going to ensure that this message itself corresponds to a message that someone needs to react to get roles is we're going to hit the database. So we don't need to do anything else from here because we don't need anything else. We just need the ID of the message. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, look, if the message is a partial, okay, we're going to go ahead and say let's ID. We're going to get the ID of the message. So we're going to say reaction.message because that's all we'll need. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to target my database. So we're going to import our schema. Okay, again, the nice thing about ORMs is you can reuse your schema over and over again to get whatever data you need. So I'm going to put that const message model equals require database. Okay, so what I'm going to do, oh wait, whoops, it should be models.message. Okay, and what we're going to do here is we're going to hit the database. And what I want to do is I want to check to see if the database has a document where it has the message ID property that matches this ID. It's kind of like how earlier over here in the previous episode when we were trying to see if there was an existing document with the corresponding message ID. It's kind of like the same thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say, okay, if that is true, well, we're gonna check the database. So we're gonna go. I'm stuttering. We're gonna go ahead and use this message model schema. We're gonna say find one, and we're gonna do the same thing. Message ID maps to that. So we're basically going to check to see if there's a document where the message ID property has the value of whatever ID this is. Okay, and we're going to use. We're gonna await this promise. And we're gonna go ahead and say let's. Okay, so if message document, and I'm gonna use a try catch because again, error might be thrown, so we need to always catch our errors. So if the message document exists, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, look, there's an actual role reaction configuration set up with this message, right? Okay, let's go ahead and target this again. So let's just wait for our bot to restart. We target the database, and there you go. Role reaction exists. Perfect. Okay. Now, obviously, here's one issue that I will point out. Every single time we are reacting to, it's always targeting. Every single time we're reacting to this message, it's always going to target the database. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to cache our documents. So instead of hitting the database every single time, we're going to hit. We're going to hit a data structure. We're going to hit our cache. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that we're going to manage a map, okay? And actually, here's what I'm going to do. Okay. So the reason why I want to cache our results is because I don't want to hit my database every single time, cuz hitting the, let's say for example, if you have if your bot is in like so many different guilds, right? You want to always think about how can you optimize your queries, right? This is one way you can optimize it. Instead of, it doesn't make sense to constantly hit the database for the same data every single time that you know is going to stay for a while. Now, unless you make changes, like you make updates to your role reaction configuration, then yes, you should hit the database. So in that case, you would have to consider how long should we cache our data for, or we should modify the cache whenever we update the database. Okay, and again, of course, I'm going to show you guys how to do that in future videos. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create yet another variable. You know what? I'll just do we'll just say const. Oh my god, this is so messy. I'll do this. Const cached message reactions. I don't even know what to call this, to be honest, but this is just going to be a map. So it's going to be the ID maps to the cached results of the documents. Okay. So if it exists, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, look, get our cached message reaction, set the ID. Is going to be the key. The value of this is going to be the document. So actually, I don't know what the document actually looks like just yet. So I need to actually log it. Okay. So it looks like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to map it to this object over here. So we're going to go ahead and say set message documents and this handy dandy emoji role mappings. Okay, great. Now, since we're caching our results, we need to always, we need to check to see if the message is cached or not. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this. So if the message is a partial, I'm actually just going to fetch the message. Okay, and this is going to be cached, so every single time we react to it, not a cached message. So we're only going to fetch it one time. I know I said we didn't have to fetch it, but I'm only doing this so that we can hit this else case. So that way in this else case, I can just hit the cache, like our own cache for our results. Okay, so watch this. So, let's wait. What's going on here? Why is it not logging? Okay, so it just cached it. Okay, now if I react to YouTube, it's gonna say not a cached message. Okay, and inside here, what we're gonna do is we're going to reference this cache over here. We're gonna get the message ID. So we're gonna do reaction.message.id. That's gonna give us the object. So let's just say let's emoji role mappings equal this. Okay. And what we're gonna do is let's just log it real quick so we can see what it looks like. So okay, there we go. That's what it looks like. Okay, so let me restart my bot again. So if I react to Twitter, it's going to fetch the message and it's going to be cached, and it's going to we're going to cache our own results from the database into a map. Okay, and if we react to other emojis, it's going to target our cache, our own cache. Okay, there you go. So what we're going to do next is we need to get the emoji ID that they reacted with. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say, let's see, I think we also need to fetch the reaction as well. I think we do. Because if you fetch a message, I don't think it fetches the reactions. So let's just do this real quick. Oh wait, no, we don't need to fetch anything. Okay, we can actually just do console.log reaction.emoji.name. No, we need the ID, sorry about that. Okay. We have the ID. Okay, great. Okay, so we have the ID of the emoji. So what we're going to do is we're going to check this emoji role mappings object, and we're going to see if it has a we're going to see if it has the emoji ID as a property, and if it does, we're going to get the value of it. So we're going to say if, so since this is an object, we're going to say message.document emoji role mappings as own property. Excuse me. And we're going to pass in the string. This should return true. Okay, let's. Okay, it didn't return true because this is actually I think not a string. So we're going to need to stringify this using simple syntax. Because JavaScript is annoying, but that should do the trick, hopefully. Anytime now, bot. Okay, no, we need to actually wrap it with quotes. Okay. Should work now. Why is it not working? I did just... I mean, is this an actual map, or is it... Because I figured it'd just be an object, but... Because if we're getting it from a database, I'm pretty sure it serializes it back to... Yeah, it's not a map. It's an object, and these things are... Well, what's the emoji ID? Wait, what am I doing? Oh my god, it's not ID, it should just be... Oh my god. Wait, what am I doing? Okay, yeah, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, it should have been reaction.emoji.id. Sorry, it's literally almost 3 AM. And I want to try without the string interpolation first, just to see if there's type inference, so... Okay, great. So that works. Awesome. Okay, so if that is true, okay, so if it has that, then we're going to go ahead and say let role ID equals message document emoji role mappings. And we're going to reference it by the property. So reaction emoji.id. So this should get us the role ID. Again, lots of testing. And that's the ID of the role, right? So Twitter, let's double check. If it is 53389, it should be the same. Yep, perfect, great. So if that's the role ID, okay, we're then going to have to check the guild to see if there is an actual role that exists. So since we have the ID, what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to go ahead and say reaction.message.guild. Give me 1 sec. Okay, yeah. We already fetched it already, so we should have all the information. I was just concerned that maybe we might not have the information, but we definitely do. Okay, because again, if you don't fetch the message, there's going to be certain properties that might not exist. But I'm pretty sure even with the guild, because I think internally they probably do all the parsing of like the guilds and stuff. So I'm not entirely sure though. I would have to check the source code. But what we're going to do is we're going to say reaction.message.guild.roles.cache.get, and we're going to pass in role ID, and we're going to say let role equals. So let's just log the role to the console just to make sure that it actually existed. So our bot should restart anytime now. React, and there we go. Perfect. We have the actual role. And that is beautiful. That is very beautiful. Amazing. Okay, great. So if they have the role, if the guild has the role, we're then just going to add the role to the user. I think that's pretty much it. And remember, we're not checking things like permissions because again, if you're using this role reaction bot, don't add roles that have permissions because that just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so anyways. We then need to actually do one more thing. We need to get the member object. So to do that, it's going to be very easy. All we're going to do is we're going to say let member equals. We can do reaction.message.guild.members.cache.gets user.id, because we can't just use the user object to add the role to. We need to actually use the member object itself. Okay, so if role and member, well, let me do this. If the role doesn't exist, let's just send a message. Let's just this is debatable. I'm gonna let you guys worry about it. But if the role doesn't exist, we're not gonna do anything, obviously, because the role doesn't exist. Because we can't add the user to a role if it doesn't exist. So we'll just do this. If role and member. We're going to say member.roles.add, and you're going to pass in the role object. Okay? And obviously, any errors that's going to happen will be thrown down here. And that should add the user to the role. And you can also send the user DM. You can send the DM if you want. But I'll leave it like this for now. We also have to do the same thing down here too, so we're not done yet. The only difference is down here, we're referencing the cache, so we need to go ahead and just do this check. If it has the reaction emoji ID property, we're going to do all this check. What I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to, I'm going to do this. Let's role mappings equals message document. So I'm going to destructure that property from this object, and I'm going to have it like this because the code over here is going to be the same exact thing. That's assuming that the cache. That's assuming that all the data should be good. Okay, yeah, it should be anyways. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this inside a function, check role. Add user role rather, and yeah, we're just gonna do the same thing there. So we're gonna invoke this function. It should work just fine down here as well. So that way I can save a couple lines of code. Okay, so we're gonna check emoji role mappings. We're gonna pass that in there because right now this variable is not defined in this scope because we're in a different scope right now. Okay, and role ID, declaring that, and role member. Perfect. Okay, so this should without a doubt work. If it doesn't, I don't know. Maybe I might need to double check something, but it should work without a doubt. Just gotta wait for a freaking bot to restart. Okay. Whew. Crossing my fingers. Didn't work. Message document is not defined. Oh. There we go. Okay. Now it should work. Just wait for our bot to restart. Okay. No errors. Yes, it worked. That was so not an enthusiastic yes, but I'm actually really happy that this actually works. Wow, this is so crazy. If I give myself the Snapchat role, Facebook, YouTube, oh my god, this is so cool. Wow, this is amazing. This is beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And of course, I can just we haven't written the code yet to remove the reactions. But you can see I can just react and they'll give me all the roles, which is amazing. All right. Okay. So I think that will conclude this video. Just to recap, what we did was we opted into partials, okay, inside the message reaction add event. Originally, I did not want to fetch the message, but I figured since a way to optimize our code, a way to optimize our database, so instead of having to hit the database every single time the user reacts to a message, because again, if you have a guild full of like 10,000 people, right, or if you have your bot in like 20,000 guilds, you want to find a way to stop hitting the database every single time, because that's going to be a lot of transactions, a lot of queries, right? So what we did was we decided to fetch the message. Okay, so if it's a partial, right, if the message is uncached, that means that we're going to fetch that message so that it is cached, and then we're also going to fetch that means we're going to call the database only one time. We're going to fetch the database. We're going to cache the database results into the map that we created, cached message reactions. Okay, and if it isn't a partial, which means that it is cached, that also assumes that our cached message reactions has the message ID. So let's say, for example, if you have different messages that have different reactions, right, you can set that up, and I'll show you in a future video that works. Okay, so for now, we're gonna leave it like this. In the next video, I'm gonna show you guys how to remove the reactions. It's gonna be very straightforward, and I promise majority of the videos from here shouldn't exceed 30 minutes. The next video should be pretty short. So anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.